In the past few years, there's been a lot of confusion about what the role of marriage is. Some believe that it's strictly a vow of monogamy between a man and a woman, while others believe it can be a contract between any two consenting adults, regardless of their gender. This is false. Legally binding unions between a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, are nothing but an abomination of what marriage was intended to be. Lest we forget, this is a practice that began 4,000 years ago with the Sumerians, who understood that in any given population, 20% of the men reproduced with 80% of the women. Such demographics make it impossible to have a successful economy, or any of the conveniences that come from it. The Sumerians understood that if these less competitive men could be guaranteed a woman to mate with for life, they would be motivated to work long and hard in order to raise a family. Such an arrangement would dramatically increase the nation's productivity, since large numbers of men who previously had no incentive to contribute were now working 50 to 60 hours a week. For these reasons, not only was the marriage system a great leap forward in human equality, it was also a major factor behind how the Sumerians were able to become the world's first superpower. Explaining why this is so requires some background. Women are hypergamous by nature. This means they are attracted to men who are higher up on the social ladder than them, men who are effectively out of their league. Women often give in to these base desires and try to pursue more dominant alpha males. At the peak of their physical beauty, a woman can copulate with as many of these men as she wants, and many of them do just that. This creates three major problems. First is that the beta males in this environment are often left out of the picture and are usually unable to acquire a mate. Second is that any child born in this community will never know who their real father is, and thus will not have a dedicated caregiver. Third is that after a woman's attractiveness declines in her 30s, she is no longer wanted by the men, not even by the despised beta males. Without a husband bound by a marriage contract, she would be left to live out the rest of her life miserable, hungry, and alone. So putting it simply, the nuclear family is the very foundation of a healthy society, not just for the men and women, but for the children as well. It's a win-win scenario. Back in the 1960s, however, the world was subjected to the scourge known as feminism, which teaches women that marriage is not in their best interest, and that choosing to be a housewife or mother would effectively make them an underachiever. These fatuous ideas caught the notice of wealthy politicians and bankers, who needed a way to covertly expand government influence. At some point in time, they decided that destroying the family structure would enable them to do this. If large numbers of women could be convinced that sexual promiscuity was no longer something to be ashamed of, then obviously they would have no reason to marry a beta male who could financially provide for them. Instead, these women would spend their time pursuing alpha males with no incentive to commit to them, which usually resulted in a bastard child born out of wedlock. Since there was no father or husband in the picture, this would enable the government to step in and take control over single-parent families. Decades later, we're beginning to see not only the extinction of fatherhood, but a precipitous drop in our nation's productivity. There's a very simple reason for this. When less competitive men are not guaranteed a woman to mate with for life, they have no incentive to put in the kind of hours we think of as historically normal. This results in the economy slowing to a snail's pace, endangering the lives of millions of people who depended upon their servitude, including those who had the audacity to attack their marriage system in the first place. Be careful what you wish for.